Great. So now we're recording. So Jeff Bagg, I'm the city planner here in Easthampton. I'm with Emily Slotnick from Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, and we're about to kick off this second virtual meeting, the final virtual meeting for the open space and rec plan. What I was saying before I started recording is that these types of plans are really important for us. It sets up goals and strategies and things that we should be looking at pursuing in the next 7 years. We've had a really great process. We had tremendous response via the survey, and we had a really great steering committee that consisted of Salem Derby as a city councilor, Wendy Hammerl from the Manhattan Rail Trail Committee, Marty Klein from Pascomet Conservation Trust, John Mason is the city's Parks and Rec Director, Jay Ryan was representing both the Conservation Commission and the Community Preservation Act Committee. Brenda Salier was our planning board representative, and she was on the planning board in January of this year. Mary Lou Swain is a resident and also, an active person in our community. And Garrett Stover is land conservation advisor with Pascomet Conservation Trust. So this team, I really want to extend a thank you to them. They spend a lot of hours kind of meeting, talking, reviewing the draft plan, reviewing goals and objectives. So without them, this would be, a very difficult. This would be a very difficult endeavor, and I'm going to try to speak a little bit louder. And I think with that, I'm going to hand it over to Emily. So, Emily, let me know if I missed anything.
That's great. Thanks, Jeff. So I'm Emily Slotnick. I work for the Pioneer Valley Planning Commission, which is the regional planning agency that works with communities in Hampden and Hampshire County. There are 13 regional planning agencies across the state. We are yours. And the city of Easthampton hired us to help with the update of their open space and recreation plan. These plans are really important because they serve as guiding documents, like Jeff said, in many communities where there are no other guiding documents. Many communities don't have master plans. And so the open space and recreation plan often serves sort of fills that void. In Easthampton, it's a specific plan, and it's updated for all communities who want to remain eligible for certain funding every 7 years. So that's where we are now. I did want to say about this list of committee members that a number of them are also Easthampton residents, in addition to the titles that are listed here. So it was really, really a pleasure to work with such a dedicated group of folks who just brought such a wealth of knowledge about the community and about the needs of residents here. So it's been a really fantastic process. I'm going to, let's see, we'll talk about the agenda in a minute. Last thing I'll say about the committee is just that in addition to sort of participating and sharing thoughts, they put a lot of time and effort into helping create the public survey and also getting it out to the public, making sure we got that phenomenal turnout, as Jeff said. The committee reviewed the goals and objectives of the plan and helped to update those. And then there's a whole lot of time that these committees put into reviewing the plan draft as it's sort of generated from our end, from the consultants in sections. So section by section, we go through and update these plans, and it's all, they're not short plans. And so the committee is really to be commended for focusing on such a large amount of information. So we have a 2-hour block of time scheduled here tonight. We will take as much of that as we need to have the discussion that folks want to have here. We've gone through welcome and introductions. I'm going to talk about, I think we've all been doing Zoom meetings now for some time, but we still hope that we're bringing new people into this process. So I am going to go over some logistics of just the nuts and bolts of doing a virtual meeting and how we're going to do it tonight. And then the process overview, I want to make sure that everyone understands how this planning process happened and what information went into this final draft that we're really presenting tonight. And that's been available for public review for a few weeks now. And then lastly, the meat of this meeting is to go step by step through the 7-year action plan. That is really the cornerstone of this plan update. So we have 5 goals, and under each goal, there are a number of actions that have been proposed to meet that goal. We're going to walk through all those actions, and we're going to ask for your input on those actions, and then we'll wrap up. I want to say some really great photos that you'll see throughout this presentation. A majority of them were taken by one of our committee members, Mary Lou Splain, and I want to thank her for her efforts there. She, I think, rode her bike around this fall and just got some really great shots of the city. So again, the purpose, the reason we're here, this is a public meeting. We do want to hear from you. And I won't be talking the whole time. After the first 25 minutes or so, we'll open it up. We're hosting the meeting via Zoom. Obviously, you're all on this platform. Probably most of you are familiar with it. There's still a couple things we want you to remember. If for some reason you get kicked off of this meeting, we'll still be here. So just go follow the link that you clicked to log on in the first place, and you'll get brought back in. We will ask participants, once I'm done with the main body of this presentation, we're going to ask for some feedback, and we're going to open it up for a discussion, a group discussion. And at that point, we'll ask participants to share their thoughts in the chat box. Until that point, just for safety, to avoid any sort of Zoom corruption, as some of us have seen, we're going to keep that chat box limited to participants communicating with the meeting hosts. The hosts right now are Jeff and I, and Jeff's colleague, Cassie Traggart, who's the conservation agent, who's going to help with the chat box, and my colleague, Ken Kamiya, who's also going to be sort of helping out with technical support. So we'll be monitoring the chat box, but you won't be able to see one another's comments until we get to that interactive part. I want to draw your attention to that chat box. So that the chat feature in Zoom, the blue arrow to the left on the bottom of your screen points to a little chat symbol and the word chat. There's a yellow box around it. That's the button that you click. If you don't see your chat box, go click that. To the right of that is the hand raising button. If you have a question or you want to draw our attention to you, this will be particularly helpful later on in the meeting when we're going to allow certain folks to speak. If you'd like to chime in, we'll let you speak. So you'll have to raise your hand, and we'll be able to call on you that way. If you're in full screen mode, so when you click on that chat box, the chat window should open on the right side of your screen. If you're not in full screen mode, if you are in full screen mode, it'll open in a window that you can move around your screen. So if you haven't yet, click on that chat button, just get familiar with the interface there. Throughout the meeting, we will be dropping links in that chat box as well. So you'll want to keep an eye on it, and you can click the links to follow them. We'll be doing some polls, and that's one way that you can answer those polls. You'll notice everyone's microphones are muted, and our cameras, other than the panelists here, are turned off. And this is intentional. The reason being is to keep the focus on the presentation, and also because a lot of folks struggle with bandwidth, and this is a really good way. Keeping your video off is a good way to make sure that you don't have interruptions with your internet connection. So again, if you have any technical difficulties, please reach out to us in the chat box. I will say that we obviously have limited capabilities to respond and troubleshoot, but we will do our best. So last piece on virtual participation. I mentioned we're going to be doing a couple of polls. So logistics behind that. There are 4 ways that you can access the polls. The first 2 are really the only 2 that I think we've seen people use. If you have a smartphone nearby, open up the camera function and hover it over this circle QR code. You should get a pop-up that asks if you want to go to the link. You press yes or click the link, and that'll bring you to a poll everywhere interface. Another way to get there is to click the link that Cassie just dropped in our Zoom chat box. Now, that'll pull up the same poll, but it will minimize your Zoom window. So you'll have to remember to come back to the Zoom so you can follow along with the presentation after we do this. Another way you could do it is to minimize your Zoom window, open up a browser and type pollev.com into your browser search bar, enter Emily S119, and that'll get you there. Or you could use a cell phone, normal cell phone, not a smartphone, and text the response to 22333. So we're going to do a test run to make sure that we've all got that. Again, most of you are probably going to do the QR code or follow the link in the text box. Should take just a couple of seconds to see our first poll question. Let's see. So what are we looking forward to most after quarantine? We've got a couple answers coming in.
I'll just add, I did it with my phone and I just needed to hit refresh on it one time and then the question popped up. But it is the easiest way. I know that not everyone has the iPhone, so if you don't, you can try to click on that link there.
Okay, and I'm just going to yeah, and this is frozen here too. So I might have to troubleshoot that later on in the presentation if we're not getting those coming in. Cassie, are you seeing results? We've got one more way to look at this.
Saying yes in the chat. So stuff seems to be coming in on the app.
Yeah, we might. All right. Are you seeing what's coming in here?
I saw mine. It was seeing live music. Saw some hugs.
Yeah, hugs, getting together with family, eat in a restaurant.
Yeah.
More live music. Indeed.
Gathering with friends. Yep, that's good. Hanging out.
All right, so this is the poll interface. It looks like people are getting it. That's great. We may have a little bit of a technical difficulty on our end, so when we get to this part of the presentation, I may just have to switch screens again like I just did here, but that is no problem. So I'm going to jump back to the presentation. And wanted to let folks know that again, Jeff said we're recording. This meeting will be recorded and posted to the project website within the next few days. We also have other materials from this process. Our first public meeting was recorded as well, and that's on our project website. We have links to the draft plan, which is posted for public review for another few weeks. And those are all at the OSRP page on the Easthampton the Easthampton city website. If you have any questions or concerns after this meeting and you want to be in direct contact, you can email planning@easthamptonma.gov. All right, so let's jump into this. This is a really nice photo of the Manhan River from the bridge on Fort Hill Road, taken this fall. So quickly, let's talk about what is an open space and recreation plan. I did say that it's something that we update every 7 years and that it does link to some state funding opportunities. The OSRP itself is really an assessment of local development and growth patterns relative to all of these topic areas on the screen. So open space, natural resources, cultural and historic resources, and recreational facilities. At the public visioning session that we did last year, the first of these two, we went over the definitions of open space and recreation, as the definitions for the purposes of this plan. If you want some more detail on that, check out the recording of that meeting. We're not going to go quite into so much detail this time. There's really a lot of content in these plans, as I said earlier, and that's summarized on the right side of this slide under plan components. In Massachusetts, most communities do open space and recreation plans. I think it's safe to say the majority of them do maintain them on that 7-year cycle or something close to it. And the reason is because they're a prerequisite for a number of conservation grants through the state. And again, because they don't have a master plan or a comprehensive plan. This does a lot of the same things. Whoops, sorry about that. So with every plan update, the community creates a new 7-year action plan, and that's going to help guide those future decisions on open space and recreation assets in the city. We are at the end of this process, so the boxes on the bottom here show us our timeline, and the remaining pieces of our process are in white. We've done our background research. Our public survey was open for nearly 2 months. We had 620 responses, maybe 619. We had that public visioning session number 1 on November 6th and finalized a draft plan for public review in the beginning of this month. So this is our second and final public meeting, and we'll go through a process to finalize the plan next month. Early February, and then we'll submit it to the Division of Conservation Services, and they'll undertake a plan review and hopefully approval. My guess would be sometime in March. And during that process, we'll also be seeking letters of support from city commissions and departments to make sure that we have the full weight of the elected officials and the actors, the people who make these things happen in the city behind the plan. So the next 8 slides are going to focus on the public outreach effort. And then we will dive into our discussion today on the goals and actions. As Jeff talked about, we collected public feedback in 2 formats, and this is the survey. We're going to talk a little bit about the survey. The survey was really big. Aside from the 2 public visioning workshops, this was really the main way, especially during COVID-19 with social distancing and public meeting restrictions. It was really the best tool that we had to get public feedback, and so we really put a lot of effort into it. We wanted to make sure that every Easthampton resident felt invited and empowered to participate. So what we did is we sent out a postcard. We did a postcard mailing to every household in Easthampton. And again, we just felt this was really important to ensure equal sharing of information, given all of the pandemic constraints on hosting public meetings and doing traditional outreach, live at community gathering locations. So we've also, to the extent possible, held these public meetings after work hours so that people who work a 9-to-5 job can attend, little things to hopefully be able to bring in more participation. So the community survey was live from October 14th to November 15th. Roughly just under 4% of the residential population, or 8.5% of all households in Easthampton, responded. And that's huge. I do these plans all over the region, and it's rare to get such strong participation. But this group decided from day one that this was a priority, and so the effort went behind it, and it paid off. The first questions of the survey, shown on the slide here, give us an idea of who responded. So we did get a fairly good split across all age groups and precincts, although I think, next time around we could benefit from hearing more from young people, not specifically those 24 and under group. and maybe a little bit more in precincts 1 and 5. And this is helpful to know for next time, hoping that we are not in a lockdown, that we can do some on-the-ground outreach and really engage these folks. Questions 4 through 7 on the survey asked about which facilities and conservation areas the respondents are using and how often they're using them. So this slide shows a quick look at the most used facilities. The numbers here are the number of people who responded that visited these sites either weekly, monthly, or a few times per year. So each bar from left to right, the numbers indicate how many respondents said they visited weekly. So if you're looking at this top one, Daly Field, 41 respondents were there weekly, 39 monthly, and 106 visited a few times per year. The 3 sites at the bottom with yellow boxes around them are the sites that the most people visited most frequently. And these results echo, and this is sort of a theme, where the results are echoing sentiments from the 2013 plan in a lot of ways, confirming that Nanotech Park Promenade, which wasn't built in 2013 as of the writing of the last plan, has become one of our most popular places, along with the Manhattan Rail Trail and Mount Tom State Reservation. So a quick notation of how many people don't know where some of the parks and conservation areas are. This was included in some of these other questions, but I pulled it out to have its own slide here because it does play a role. It's pretty significant, and it plays a role in some of our action recommendations later on. So of the 620 respondents, more than half don't know where the Gustina property is, the Borchowski parcel, Dwyer Memorial, Hannum Brook Conservation Area, John Bader Park are located. So that's more than half, in addition to all of these other, the 40, 41, 43, 45% that I didn't mention. So it's significant, and what it means is that we need to really put some resources behind doing outreach, improving our signage, maybe some mapping, and we'll see these show up in action recommendations later on. Specifically, 2 actions that came out of this discovery are to develop wayfinding materials to guide residents and visitors around the city. We want to highlight key open space and recreation areas with those, and then also to promote public access to conservation lands with improved signage, maps, and educational outreach. So question number 9 asked us to check all of the recreational activities that we do in the city, and then also comment on the condition and the needs of those facilities or those facilities that you use for these activities. So an example would be, the category would be tennis, and you'd say, you do this, and do I do this in Easthampton? Yes. Do these facilities need to be improved? Yes or no? Do these facilities need to be expanded? Yes or no? The good news is that we have no doubt that there are a lot of Easthampton residents getting out and about in the city and making use of these resources. There's just a really high response rate to this question in general. The top graph here shows the most common activities for all of the survey respondents, with walking or hiking off-road and walking on-road leading, and followed closely by biking on-road. This is also consistent with statewide trends. So the state of Massachusetts puts out a statewide conservation and recreation plan. I believe theirs is every 5 years. And the public outreach and surveys and data that they bring together for that is very consistent with the findings here. I want to say that there was another option for off-road multi-use trails in our survey that was meant to capture the Manhattan Rail Trail use, but we suspect that a lot of people, just because of the chronology of the options, a lot of people probably selected off-road trail walking when they were thinking about their use of the rail trail. So the responses might be skewed slightly in that way in our survey. In terms of which facilities need to be improved or expanded, and this is what we're showing on the bottom here, it's really not surprising that the facilities that most people want to see improved or expanded are the same ones that most people are using. So more use it leads to more wear and tear. It just means there are more users thinking about ways that something can be improved. If people aren't ever visiting a place, they're not going to know if it needs to be improved or expanded, or they're certainly not going to be thinking about it as a priority. Question number 11 asked about potential focus areas for conservation. So the 2013 plan identified 4 priority areas for land protection, and those were Mount Tom, Manhan River, Park Hill, and the Barnes Aquifer. This time around, and for this question, we offered 9 smaller areas to choose from to sort of narrow in on some of these priority areas. And the survey respondents were asked to look at a picture like the one that's on this slide, and indicate whether each area identified on this map should be considered a high, medium, or a low priority for land protection. As a side note, in the previous question, respondents highlighted drinking water protection. So question number 10 asked, how important is it to you to protect the following natural resources in Easthampton? And 97%, 416 of 427 people that responded to that question said that groundwater aquifer protection is very important. And just a little bit less, 91% of those respondents said that protection of rivers, streams, and ponds is very important. And the reason I'm pointing this out as sort of a lead-in to this slide and the results of this question is that it's important to acknowledge that certain water resources already have baseline protections from development, whether that's under the Wetland Protection Act or Floodplain Overlay District, or if it's a Zone 2 for drinking water protection. And all that's really good. And some of them, frankly, some of those protections can be taken even further. But other areas like Park Hill and Mount Tom, the slopes of Mount Tom don't have any existing protections at all. So that is the context, I think, with which some people were answering this question. So back to the question number 11 about those priority protection areas. Of those zones on the map, where is land protection most important? So the responses really came back to echo again what we heard in 2013. The land around Mount Tom, Park Hill, and the Manhan River are rated as the highest priorities for protection. And based on what I said about protecting water resources, it does make sense in this question that Mount Tom and Park Hill rise to the top as priorities for protection because these landscapes are perhaps the most vulnerable to development. So in any case, responses from both questions pretty much support those same 4 priority areas from the 2013 plan, which again were Mount Tom, Manhan River, Park Hill, and the Barnes Aquifer. These findings also agree with a 2014 study that my agency did to identify priority areas for development and protection. And that was based not on a public survey, but on a GIS analysis of lands that are most suitable for smart growth and protection, just based on which lands have critical and sensitive habitats, which lands have natural resources that would be most sensitive to the impacts of development. And that study was done regionally, but each community was sort of provided with its own map of its results. And if you do get a chance to review the draft plan, there is a figure of those results, figure 11 in the draft plan. So you can see from that parcels along the base of Mount Tom, across the Barnes Aquifer, and in the Park Hill agricultural area are found to be of high priority for protection. So that's all that I'm going to talk about for the survey. If you want to learn more about that survey, if you want to see all of the questions or all of the responses, you can see that information not only in the plan appendix, but also I believe the full open-ended responses are available upon request from the planning department. So the November visioning session, we started by giving an overview sort of similar to this, but without as much detail on the survey and more detail on what open space planning is. We did present interim results of the survey. It was still open for a little while when we had our visioning session, and also a summary of achievements that the city has made since the publication of the 2013 plan. So what actions have been completed, what projects have been done that met certain objectives and goals. And then we asked participants to participate in a live poll similar to what we're going to do today. But in that case, it was to contribute to the plan's vision statement. And a vision statement, if you're familiar with planning and general planning processes and best practices, you come up with goals and you come up with a vision statement early on in the process. And this is what guides it's sort of a foundational statement that should guide the rest of the plan. So the poll that we did at that visioning session asked participants to complete the sentence, "I envision Easthampton as a community where," and then we asked people to type up their response, and other respondents could vote, sort of like thumbs up on someone else's response that they really liked. So the result of that, we actually had quite a lot of material to work with. And when the committee met after that public meeting, we sorted through all of that and tried to organize all of the input in ways that fit into a vision statement. And this is what we came up with. So I will read it for those of you that might not be able to see it. Easthampton is a community where all residents can gather to share the city's parks and open spaces, which offer a wide variety of recreational activities. Easthampton's parks and conservation areas are destinations widely known throughout the community. Easthampton's public open spaces contribute to a culture of equity and inclusiveness and strengthen all other aspects of this vibrant city. The city's downtown and neighborhood streets and multi-use paths serve as green connectors, reflective of a commitment towards equitable public space, bicycle and pedestrian mobility, and environmental stewardship. Farmland and farming are valued for their role in food security and their contribution to community character. And finally, natural and scenic resources, including wildlife habitat and water quality, are valued, protected, and respected, and the city's land use regulations effectively safeguard these resources. So it's a really robust vision statement, and I think you'll see in the coming slides that the goals and the actions that came out of the planning process all really ring true to sort of what we came up with at that vision session. So we finished that public meeting with an interactive virtual sticky note exercise. This is something that as a planner I have done with maybe hundreds of public meetings where we ask people to write their thoughts on sticky notes, and we put them on boards, and we organize and we reorganize, and we share ideas. We can't do that right now because we're virtual, but we were able to facilitate a similar type of exercise. I think it worked pretty well. So the purpose was to brainstorm on objectives for the 5 goals that the committee came up with for the plan. And it really, again, like the vision statement exercise, we got a lot of really great input, just an abundance of ideas for the committee to work with and to incorporate in developing the 2021 action plan, objectives and action plan, I should say. This is all I'm going to show from that meeting, but if you want to see all of the input, it's going to be in the plan appendix, which is actually, it's in there now. So you could go to the city website, the OSRP website, and look at the draft plan, and it's in Appendix O. if you want all of the detail. All right, so now we're going to review the actions proposed in the draft plan. I think I already mentioned the action plan is split up into the goals. So there are 5 goals, and those were largely adopted as is from the 2013 plan with some tweaks. The announcement of the full draft plan posting went out on Facebook, and it has, as of a few days ago, reached over 1,000 people. It's had nearly 200 what Facebook called engagements, meaning people have clicked on it and read it or responded to it. We did, when we posted the announcement about the draft plan, we asked people to take a look at the new action plan and tell us which action will have the greatest impact on you and on your community. Tell us on Facebook, send us an email, any way that you can. And we did have a couple of responses on Facebook. Someone said of goal 2, action 6, evaluating sidewalk need, improving upon existing data, creating a map showing greatest areas of need, that was going to have a great impact on them. We've also had a couple of direct emails. Someone said, one thing that I think will have the most impact on me are the improvements to sidewalks and pedestrian access. I'm also very excited to see a city tree program in there and a potential rain garden requirement for new parking lots. The reason I'm reading these is because we're going to ask you to do the same thing today. So as we go through these goals and all the actions under the goals, I'm going to ask you to think about which of those actions is going to have the most impact on you. And I'm going to ask you to share your ideas with us as we go through. So the 5 goals are on this slide next to a picture of Jeff and his family skating on the pond earlier this week. The first goal is existing recreational facilities and opportunities are improved to meet the needs of residents. Goal number 2 is recreational facilities and opportunities are expanded to accommodate the needs of residents. Goal number 3, agriculture is preserved and promoted as an important aspect of community character. 4, lands of natural resource, scenic, and recreation value are protected and well stewarded and are connected with each other and with neighborhoods. And 5, groundwater and surface water are protected as clean and abundant resources. All right, so again, we're going to read through these. And Jeff, this is totally off the cuff here, but if you want to maybe tag team slides just so that we hear another voice here, I'm going to remind people to keep in mind which action number. So they don't all have 11 actions, but in goal number 1, we have 11 actions. As we read through these, think about which number from this slide is going to have the greatest impact on you and your neighborhood and why. And then the next slide is going to be a poll, and we'll ask you to vote on which one. And then to use the chat box in Zoom to explain to us why. So before we get started, Cassie, I'm going to ask that you enable folks to chat with one another so that when we do enter our responses as about why a certain action is going to impact them, we can all see it. Jeff, you want to take this one?
Yep, thank you. Great. That's great. And I have actual sticky notes and a pen so I can keep track of the ones that I really think are important. They're all important, but I think the question is just to engage people. What's the most important to you? What will change your sort of life in Easthampton? So I'm going to read through them pretty quick, and then we'll go back and you'll have a chance to kind of prioritize them. Number 1 is create a master plan for Nanotech Park. 2 is to evaluate opportunities for new recreation amenities such as outdoor fitness areas, skate park, disc golf, and more ADA accessible picnic tables. 3, continue expanding access to and from the Manhattan Rail Trail to connect neighborhoods, parks, and the new school. Explore options to bridge gaps in connections due to water resources and to upgrade rail trail street crossings. 4, implement upgrades to playgrounds throughout the city, including Pleasant Green, and the Pocket Park at Parsons Street and Federal Street. Prioritize improvements in the Maple and Ferry Street neighborhoods. 5, develop wayfinding materials to guide residents and visitors around Easthampton, highlighting key open space and recreational opportunities. Waypoints could include parks and rail trail access, arts and cultural installations and facilities, and more. 6 is improve parking capacity, implement traffic calming measures where needed at city recreational facilities and conservation areas. 7, create maintenance line items in the annual capital budget for all new and existing park facilities and conservation areas and trails. 8 is secure funding to complete planned improvements to Nanotech Park Pool. 9 is seek funding for design and construction of sidewalks to improve pedestrian experience and walkability. Prioritize access, connections to open space and facilities, making ADA improvements and implementing complete streets. And 10, design and construct informational kiosks at all conservation areas in the city. And 11, improve and expand on-road bike infrastructure and provide more bike parking. So that's quite an exhaustive list. And, I'll just say one quick thing as we go through this, the idea is the goal, and the intent of the goal is important because it can be applied to something that's not specifically listed. But I think it's really the intent of some of these goals.
Yeah, and so the idea here is that we're going to open up another poll like we did in the beginning. You can use the QR code that's on this slide, or you can look in the chat box where Cassie will have posted another link. I also want to allow folks to ask if you have any questions about these actions, if you need anything explained before you tell us which one you think is going to have the greatest impact on your community. We can do that now. So any questions specifically about these actions? All right, then let's go to that poll. And I'm going to jump over to that screen. Okay, so let's see, full screen. Jeff, can you see these responses?
Yes.
Great.
Yes, they're coming through. That's great.
So expanding access to the Manhan Rail Trail and bridging the gaps. I summarized the actions on the left here. That seems to be the most popular at this point. Jeff, it's hard for me to have this screen up and see the chat box. Are you seeing some responses in the chat box?
There appears to be a couple chats. The one person saying the poll isn't working. So I don't know if we have a way. It's getting that same message which has come up before. There's activity unavailable. So Cassie, I don't know if Cassie was working on that. A couple people are saying it's unavailable. So we're probably not getting everybody's poll EV responses at this point.
Okay. Are we seeing any descriptions in the chat box about why some of these might have the greatest impact on people?
The one that's fairly specific is reference to Tasty Top. So I think it's in that district. There are no, there's no, the comment was, trying to find it again. Every time a new one comes on, it bumps it. Recreational places in District 1. So I think, it's an important thing for us to look at in the future is which districts do not have sort of that ready access to facilities. So I think that's going to be noted.
Okay. All right. Let's try it again with the next action here. Go back to presenting. So goal number 2, recreation facilities and opportunities are expanded. Goal 1 was improved. This one's expanded. The first action is to complete design and construction of a boardwalk extension for the Nashwanik Pond Promenade. 2, continue to explore the feasibility of creating a dog park, including identification of possible locations and creation of rules and regulations. 3, identify locations, acquire sites if necessary, and construct new pocket parks in neighborhoods lacking access to green space. 4, design and build best practices mountain biking trail network at the Borchowski parcel and around Nanotech Park. Number 5, identify locations and improve access to cross-country ski trails, including arranging grooming on existing suitable routes and marking cross-country skiing as an allowed activity on signage and maps of existing trails. 6, evaluate sidewalk needs to improve upon existing data and create a map showing greatest area of sidewalk need, showing population density and areas to connect with open space and recreation areas. And finally, 7, and there's an asterisk here because this was added after the plan was posted. Conduct enhanced outreach in accordance with the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs public participation in environmental justice communities guidance to support underrepresented residents' participation in and access to recreational opportunities and conservation lands. So first, I'll allow folks to ask any questions. You can also use the Q&A button for questions on any of these. And otherwise, I'll have you go to the next poll. Same thing here. Let us know which of these actions is going to have the greatest impact on you or your community, and then go back to the chat box in Zoom and let us know why.
I'll just say something. The poll EV is intended to be just a little bit more fun and engaging. If you're having a problem, there's a couple people who are having still issues, so you just use the chat function if you want to just share. We'll try to, we're trying to capture your input regardless either way. So just if you're having some, and I'm being told I need to talk louder. So if you're having any issues, just use the chat as a default.
All right, evaluate map sidewalks and greatest need of improvement is coming up big here. And mountain biking. And let me see if I can look at the chat here. Any comments in the chat, Jeff?
Yeah, there's a few. Sidewalks, hugely important. Safety and security of pedestrians is crucial. There was probably a small glitch in that last item, number 7, that was added. It might not have been in the poll. Nanotech Park and the Borchowski parcel for mountain biking, should be encouraged. Goal number 2, vote for number 6. Again, I think that District 1, the neighborhood, I think it's around Route 10. There are no neighborhood parks, in that area. Number 6, boardwalk extension would help create access and safety for many. No snowmobiles on farmland. And that looks like that from this question.
Okay, great. So we will look at goal number 3.
Can we read this one?
Sure.
So the goal is agriculture is preserved and promoted as an important aspect of community character. And then some of the objectives and strategies. Number one, explore opportunities for new community garden in an accessible location. Two is create new educational promotional materials to ensure residents and visitors know about local farms and how to visit them. Include small farms, farm stands, farmers markets, and community gardens. Three is determine the viability for food production on city-owned land on Park Hill Road, such as Echodale Orchard. And I think we had some discussions. This is a good example of one where food production on city-owned land, and I think Park Hill Road is an example. So it could be, considered for others. Four, work with landowners to expand farming and protection of farmland through fee acquisition and or donations of agricultural preservation or conservation restrictions.
Great. So let's see how that poll is going. Expanding farmland protection. Okay.
Yeah,
so a tie with feasibility for an accessible community garden and education outreach about local farms and how to visit them, and then a good chunk of respondents on working with landowners to expand farming and protection of farmland. And then in the poll, in the chat, I am seeing nice to have new accessible community gardens. A vote for number one, again, community gardens. The farmers we have should be the first place to start. So I think that's sort of in response to action number 4, where we're saying work with landowners to expand farming and protection of farmland. And this person saying, let's start with those farms that we have. Education is the start, number 2, and then expand. Great. So what I'm not seeing in these chats is how are these actions? All right, we are recording. Okay, so moving on to goal number 4.
Yeah, and actually I was just going to say real quick, so as part of our meeting, we had a technical problem, and we had a great level of participation going on. We had about 30 people on the call, and it got cut, and we lost everybody. But what we wanted to do is kind of continue on with the last couple goals and slides and finish the presentation. So this video will appear as one coherent video, except for this last half, we won't have the public participation. So as anyone who's seeing this and wants to continue to contribute, we really want to hear from you. So if you're willing to send an email to planning@easthamptonma.gov, we're happy to receive more input that way. So with that, Emily, we'll try to continue on with the rest of the presentation.
Great. So yeah, we got through the first 3 goals, and we asked folks to tell us for each goal which action would have the greatest impact on them and or their communities. And we were getting some feedback in the chat box and through some online polling. So for these last 2 goals, we'll just ask for folks to submit that feedback either via Facebook or directly to the email address that Jeff just provided. So for goal number 4, which is lands of natural resource, scenic, and recreational value are protected and well stewarded and are connected with each other and with neighborhoods. The first action is promote public access to conservation lands with improved signage, maps, and educational outreach, and acquire new easements to expand parking areas and access points. Specifically for the parking, we're talking about Gastina and Borchowski parcels, conservation areas, and others. The second action is city and land trust partners work collaboratively to develop and support a core of paid and volunteer land stewards for conservation land maintenance. Building this capacity could include the following: offering conservation restriction monitoring volunteer trainings or contracting out for conservation restriction monitoring, funding a full-time conservation agent and trail stewardship staff or contractors for those same purposes, ensuring trail stewards have implicit bias training, and recruiting more land stewards of color. Action number 3, review and amend zoning ordinances, for instance, transfer of development rights, open space, recreational, I got that wrong. Jeff, you're going to have to help me with this one. OSRD.
Yep, that's the open space residential development.
Residential development. The open space recreational phrase just gets locked into my mind. So open space residential development ordinance, solar bylaw, subdivision regulations, etc., with the goal of balancing future development with resource protection. Number 4, promote greater utilization of the Chapter 40R Smart Growth Overlay District Ordinance. Number 5, work with conservation partners and landowners to identify land protection opportunities within the core priority protection areas and seek funding to implement protection. And I'll just point out with the core priority protection areas, those are the areas that we showed on a slide earlier that were associated with certain sort of blocks of the city. Number 6, adopt ridgeline protection ordinance to protect the steep slopes of Mount Tom from erosion and disturbance of rare, threatened, and endangered species. Number 7, develop a plan for and implement management of invasive plants in important habitat areas, including conservation lands along the Manhan River. And finally, action number 8, create a city tree program. Conduct a public shade tree inventory and provide free street trees to residents, and develop a volunteer tree steward corps. So again, we would love to hear your thoughts on these actions. Which one do you think is going to have the greatest impact on you and your community, and how or why you feel that way? So we hope that you'll be in touch with us any way that you can.
And Emily, before you go on, would you make me a quick co-host? I'm going to share the screen, so I have it all queued up behind the scenes. We'll just show that slide real quick so people can take a peek.
Yes. Are you referring to the slide of the protection areas?
No, the slide of the goals.
The goals. Let's see here. All right, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah. So again, just for purposes for the public presentation, the rest of the video, these are the goals that Emily just read in, and that way people can take a peek at them. Great.
I'm seeing, Jeff, I'm seeing the goal number 4 slide still.
Okay. And were you on goal 5?
Yes. I just wanted to point out that I didn't actually see the slide of all of the goals, if that's what you're trying to show.
Yeah, I was trying to catch up with you. I apologize. Let's see. Do you have the ability? Do you want to try? I wanted to pop it up there while we were walking through them.
Yeah, so I mean, you want to see the 5 goals on one slide?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I can do that. You're going to have to give me the host back. All right.
Perfect.
All right, so we want to see this slide, right?
Yep. And then as you were walking through as you were reading the last set of strategies, there was no screen posted. So I was just trying to catch people up to show that of the last one.
I'm going to redo it then. Sorry. We're going to have to patch this video. I thought that the screen was up the whole time.
Yeah. Okay. So let's pause. Do you want to just,
I think we can edit the video.
Okay.
So we were just seeing our faces. Is that what was happening?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So we'll just patch in to, all right. So the first action under goal number 4, promote public access to conservation lands with improved signage, maps, and educational outreach, and acquire new easements to expand parking areas and access points at locations including the Gustina and Borachowski parcel conservation areas. Action number 2, city and land trust partners work collaboratively to develop and support a core of paid and volunteer land stewards for conservation land maintenance. Building this capacity could include the following: offering conservation restriction monitoring volunteer trainings or contracting out conservation restriction monitoring, funding a full-time conservation agent and trail stewardship staff or contractors to do the same, ensuring stewards have implicit bias training, and recruiting more land stewards of color. Action number 3, review and amend zoning ordinances, for example, the transfer of development rights, open space residential development, solar bylaw, subdivision regulations, etc., with the goal of balancing future development with resource protection. Action number 4, promote greater utilization of the Chapter 40R Smart Growth Overlay District Ordinance. Number 5, work with conservation partners and landowners to identify land protection opportunities within the core priority protection areas and seek funding to implement protection. And to have a closer look at what we're referring to as core priority protection areas, folks should take a look at the draft plan posted on the city's website. Number 6, adopt ridgeline protection ordinance to protect the steep slopes of Mount Tom from erosion and disturbance of rare, threatened, and endangered species. Number 7, develop a plan for and implement management of invasive plants in important habitat areas, including conservation lands and along the Manhan River. And finally, action number 8 under goal 4 is create a city tree program. Conduct a public shade tree inventory and provide free street trees to residents, and develop a volunteer tree steward corps. So we have been asking participants of the meeting to, for each goal, tell us which action under that goal is going to have the greatest impact on you and your community, and tell us why. Because we have lost our ability to communicate live with our participants right now, we're just going to ask that the folks who are watching this after the fact send an email to the planning department, or let us know on the Facebook page why you think any particular action under this goal is going to have the greatest impact on you. And we'll wrap up with actions under goal number 5. Jeff, you want to take this one?
Sure. Yep. So the goal 5 is groundwater and surface water are protected as clean and abundant resources. And here we have quite a few strategies to look at. So strategy number 1, develop a local wellhead protection plan for municipal wells. 2, establish an Easthampton Aquifer Protection Committee to support and direct efforts for drinking water protection. 3 is draft and adopt local wetlands ordinance based on the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commission sample ordinance to increase protection of isolated wetlands and climate sensitive and resilient wetlands. 4 is expand education and outreach to private well owners, schools, and the general public about the Barnes Aquifer, including best management practices to prevent pollution and protect supply. create materials about the following: proper waste, especially dog waste, disposal, invasive, non-native species, and the benefit of native landscaping, rain barrels, and other at-home conservation options. 5, maintain sediment control measures to Nashawanek Pond and other surface waters and monitor for new erosion issues. 6 is to evaluate winter storage and management practices, including opportunities to reduce the use of harmful de-icing agents and consider alternative snow storage locations away from the Manhan River and Barnes Aquifer. 7 is to work with landowners to protect open space over the Barnes Aquifer through fee acquisition, CRs, which is conservation restrictions, agricultural protection restrictions, or donations. And 8, improve enforcement of local regulations protecting and conserving groundwater and surface water, including outside water use bans, deed restrictions, and constraints on pesticide use. And then number 9 is review and revise local regulations to increase their ability to protect groundwater and surface water. And the strategy directs us to consider the following: amend the existing stormwater bylaw, create a rain garden requirement for new parking lots, incentivize the use of green infrastructure, require inclusion of protected deed restrictions in aquifer recharge areas, and require flag to require and flag when properties are sold, monitor and regulate lawn care services use of restricted pesticides. So those are all really important. So as we've done, I think, people, if they have the chance to continue to help us just kind of gauge their priorities of these, is to submit some comments on these. Tell us which ones you think would be most important to you. I will say that we did a municipal vulnerability preparedness study as well about 2 years ago, and there was a lot of interest in things that people could do at home, and if there were ways that the city could help. And we've done rain barrels and compost bins, and so any of those things that we can do, especially if they're funded through grants, and help residents kind of do these things at home, those seem really important as well. You're muted, sorry.
Thanks. So I was just saying that that's a great point. I wanted to point out that as a part of this and really any other planning process that the city undertakes, there's really early on in the development, there's a review of other recent plans and projects that the city's undertaken. And so those actions that Jeff just mentioned from the municipal vulnerability preparedness process would have been considered and were considered as we developed sort of the background information for this plan. So there will be overlap, and there should be overlap. So that concludes our review of the goals and actions of the 2021 Easthampton Open Space and Recreation Plan update. That's our 7-year action plan as proposed right now. Again, our draft plan is posted on the city's website, open for public comment still for another 2 weeks. Questions or comments about anything that you've seen in this presentation today, we would love to hear from you, and we would be happy to answer any of your questions and consider your comments. So easthamptonma.gov/OSRP, we'll put that on the next slide. Our next steps are Pioneer Valley Planning Commission's contract with the city is through this spring. So with this conclusion of this public meeting, which is being recorded and will be posted on the project website, we will have concluded the remainder of the public engagement component. That said, we do still want to hear from you, and we will respond to your questions. The committee is going to make any revisions required after this public meeting and after we've closed our public comment period. And as a result of input from this meeting, we likely won't whole-scale remove any action items, but collective input could provide clarity if a few of the actions, have rise to the top based on what folks, the input that folks gave us on those actions that will be of greatest impact to them. And any of those types of things will be written up in our narrative. And then the plan is going to go before City Council and other city boards and commissions in the next few weeks, and will be submitted to the Massachusetts Division of Conservation Services for their review and feedback. So again, on the bottom of this slide is where we are. February through March, we'll be going through those final tweaks and submittals and hearing from the state about what, if any, revisions they require. And by April or May, the city will have a final approved plan. So I want to thank you all again for being here. We apologize for the technical difficulties. We do hope that we hear from you about those last two actions. And it's been a pleasure working with this committee and with all of the residents in Easthampton who have participated in the planning process. So thank you for that. Jeff, any last words?
No, just a big thanks. We have had a lot of great participation on this one, so it's much appreciated. I appreciate your work, Emily, on behalf of Easthampton. So look forward to a couple more emails on input, and then we're going to put the plan in place and start taking some steps on the action plan. So I thank everyone as well.
Okay, great. Well, thanks, Jeff. Have a good night, everyone.
Thanks. Good night.